Hello, everyone. Welcome to the World Science Movement Education Series. And this episode will be covering learning engagement through storytelling. Everything, all concepts can be told from a storytelling land, especially STEM subjects, are very open to that interpretation. This is why today I'll be talking about how you can incorporate storytelling into your lesson plan to make sure your students have a better grasp on the topic you are teaching. Also, all the educational materials on the Twin app are prepared in a story structure. This will allow you to test your storytelling skills on your students with the help of the curriculum you receive. Let's overview what we will be learning in this module. First, we'll talk about the benefits of storytelling. There are many benefits for both teachers and students, and knowing them will give a sense of purpose to what we do here. Then, we will talk about how teachers transform into storytellers when they are teaching and how this is important. After that, we will discuss the act of learning storytelling. Is it something that comes from within, or is it a skill perfected through practice? That's the kind of thing we will discuss. Later, we will go over the basics of storytelling. There are 3 main points to always keep in mind, and we will talk about what they are. Finally, I'll be giving you tips on engaging students through stories. You can incorporate these tips into your lesson plans, one by one, and see how your students react to them. So now, let's begin. The power of stories has been recognized for centuries. Stories are a natural mode of thinking. Before formal education begins, we are already learning from Aesop's fables or fairy tales or family history. Indeed, some researchers have even claimed that all knowledge comes in the form of stories. What are some benefits of storytelling in teaching? Stories can serve multiple functions in the classroom, including sparking students' interest, aiding the flow of lectures, and making material memorable. They also inspire purposeful talking and participation. They raise enthusiasm for reading text, to find stories, or to reread them. They also initiate writing because children will quickly want to write stories and tell them. They also enhance the community in the room, improve listening skills, and overall, it is engaging. It creates a sense of community which brings us social and emotional benefits. Storytelling in a classroom is also beneficial in overcoming student resistance or anxiety, and it helps build rapport between the instructor as the students are among students themselves. That is because storytelling builds empathy, enabling us to put ourselves in someone else's shoes, which creates the foundation of social emotional intelligence that is so important in early education. And what's beautiful is that stories are not just for children. They're for all of us, helping us better understand the world. Storytelling is the most effective way to communicate an essential truth to another person. It is a connection point between 2 people. It gives meaning, context, and understanding in a road that is awesome, filled with chaos and disorder. And because of this, educators must use stories if they hope to reach their students. Stories will stay with people much longer than facts or statistics. If a teacher becomes an excellent storyteller, they can ensure that any concept they teach will be remembered for years to come. Stories don't just work well for a narrative. They can be used to illustrate scientific or mathematical processes as well. Take, for example, the difference between learning formulas and the ability to solve the problem in the context of a real-life example. Stories bring information, knowledge, and truth to life. Every teacher develops a personal style as a storyteller in time. Some teachers like to add arm and hand gestures, but telling stories more straightforwardly can also be just as effective. Don't think like stage fright or concerns about holding the children's attention for a long time stops you, because if you relax and enjoy yourself, children will respond to your enthusiasm and have fun as well. Now let's talk a bit about learning storytelling. And storytelling is something within you. It's like intuition or eye colour. But in reality, storytelling is a skill that can be perfected through practice, observation, and repetition. It's no different from learning a language or playing an instrument, but it's much easier. The reason is you see the results of the storytelling methods you integrate into your teaching immediately. And this social data you receive is invaluable in helping you hone your craft. The more you tell your stories, the better they will get. Now let's move on to some basics of storytelling. When turning information into a story, there are 3 main points you should pay attention to. And the first one is relatability. If your story is relatable, you need to ask yourself, do your students find something in it that makes them want to learn more about it and can be easily related to it? Now let's give an example here. The story might be about a lonely photon finding its way out of the sun, but it's tough for it to reach the sun's surface from its core. It's thinking about the hundreds of thousands of years it's going to take to just get out of the sun. And then it still has a long way to go until it reaches the Earth. It feels alone, it feels tired, it feels depressed. And these are some of the feelings that students at the K-12 learning experience daily. By teaching this concept of a journey in this manner, you both allow the students to code this information into their brain as memory and feel more at ease about opening up about their feelings. The second basic essential of storytelling is performance. You know storytelling is one of the oldest crafts there. Think of the bards from Shakespeare or from even before. They used to tell stories while they also sang and while they also acted. So how do you perform the story? You must engage the students with your performance. This does not mean that you have to sing or act. It just means that you are telling the story, you are performing. This means you have a lot you can learn from performance. How do you use your body language? How do you use your voice? Or how do you use your tone of voice? How do you use your language? How do you use your gestures? These things are all adopted, and they make a story great, and make a story impossible to forget. And finally, there is the story structure. There are different theories about what the structure of a story should be. Some say a story is a 3-act thing. Some think of a 12 steps circle called the hero's journey. But one thing is for sure, and it is common in all 3 structures. There should be a conflict, and there should be a resolution. These are the 2 things your story must have. It doesn't matter if it's the story of a mathematical equation or about solar energy, but it must have a conflict, and it must have a solution. Shall we talk about the benefits of storytelling? But how can we as educators achieve good storytelling? How can you explain a concept as a good story? So there are many tips and methods you can try to incorporate storytelling into your lesson plan. I gather the most essential 5 here to get you started, but of course, you can hone your craft and get better with time. The first one, I think, is the most important one, is using simple but vivid language. Talking long and difficult to understand sentences define the point of storytelling. Try to paint a world picture using simple and to-the-point language. Make it easy for your students to picture and dream about what you tell them. For this, I suggest analysing some of the most popular children's books like Dr. Seuss and see how they use language. The second most important tip I want to give you today is having a full feeling conclusion. The end of your story is how your story will stay in the minds of students. The important takeaway point of your story should be placed at the end, and it should create an oh moment. How our brain operates is in line with this understanding, because we were good and solid conclusions to stories. They're invested in so we can happily put them away in our boxes as memories. Therefore, make sure to give your students the conclusion they need to turn that information into a memory. Thirdly, you should also pay attention to telling the truth. Children are much smarter than adults give them credit for, and they will sense if there is any insincerity in your words. Be upfront and honest with them. Do not sugarcoat hard facts and hard truth just because this is a story. Tell them everything the way it is. A good example would be the climate crisis. Global warming is ending our planet and it's a fact. And it is hard to talk to children without creating fear. But creating the story where they are heroes, using their knowledge to save the planet, makes the concept of global warming much easier to deal with. Think of twin kids you will be using in your classes or the Twin app. You can use them as tools in this quest to save the world. The truth is much easier to handle and understand this way, when told as a story. And then, you should also pay attention to setting the scene. Setting the scene correctly and imaginatively. You can take them on a journey in imagination. For instance, if the story takes place on the beach, you can talk about the sound of the waves, the smell of the sea, the happy chatter of people, the noises seagulls make. You can ask your students to close their eyes, put away their notebooks, just focus on the moment, and start telling your story after that. Try to create experiences through your storytelling. There are so many learning tools as strong as good storytelling. And finally, just like you would with a lesson plan what you will tell in your story before the class. Map out the beginning, the middle, and the ending in your mind. Or you can create a mind map. Search for some true stories that happened in the area you're going to talk about. For instance, if you're going to talk about the first cars and the steam engine, learn about how Savory came up with the steam pump. What's the story behind it? Because there's a story behind everything. Start the class with that information. Continue with a steam pump adventure on the Twin app. Make a little vacuum experiment. If you plan these before, your student still easily follows through. In conclusion, remember your favourite topics at school. Remember the best memories. Now remember the information that starts with you. You can also trace that information back to your story. It might be a story of that day or a story that your teacher laid out for you, but stories are tools that make us remember. They help us turn information into knowledge and memories. They are more than just ways of exchanging information and extending ideas. They are your students' means of reaching out and connecting with other people. Stories can link not only the classroom and home, but can also link the classrooms with beyond. Stories provide a common thread that can help unite cultures and provide a bridge across the cultural gap. So this is one of my favourite quotes about storytelling, and I want to share with you before we finish. You may tell a tale that takes up residence in someone's soul, becomes their blood and self and purpose. That tale will move them and drive them, and who knows what they might do because of it. Your words. That is your role, your gift. Thank you so much for listening. And I hope you can make use of this information as you prepare your lesson plans and use Twin Kids and app and reach your classes.